Welcome to the today's dialogue, and today we are going to talk about the Let Them movement, which relates to a lot of the things that you all have been talking about over the last couple of decades. Um, I think it's my hunch anyway. And Kai Sorenson, I don't, how do you pronounce that, Kai?
Sorenson, yeah.
Suggested
Three,
that
three, three syllables.
Sorenson. Thank you. I'm gonna let I'm gonna let Kai do the talking today. He suggested the topic and let you kick it off, Kai, and then we'll pass it around.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. Thanks for coming. Leroy and I talked a little bit about this last month, and so we put our heads together. And what I'm going to talk to you about tonight, or today actually, is around this topic of Mel Robbins writing a book called Let Them. And what I experienced from that process, I haven't read the book and I don't own it yet, but I'm watching and following her a lot online. And what's come up is a number of groups around wherever they are coming together in a Let Me group internet. And so they have a group of people who come together and they talk about what's going on in their lives around this process of Let Them. And it's getting a little out of control, I would say. People are not signing up to the process, and they're not necessarily focusing on the Let Me process or book. They just are complaining about what their lives look like and how difficult it is to use Let Me. Because if we're talking about one person on one person, and I need to say, let me about that one person, that's pretty clear. You have to find ways to not engage with them. But the problem is that a lot of people who are trying to work their way through the Let Me book and the Let Me process is that they're not just one person. Maybe it's a family. Maybe there's two or three people that you need to say that to, and that becomes much more complicated. So, what I wanted to talk to you a little bit about today is that part of the process of Let Me is um, related to narcissism and gaslighting. And so that's really what my interest is in this because I like to um, kind of figure out how it was that I spent 5 years in a relationship and I didn't really know I was being gaslighted. Um, I, I bought the book when I started talking about narcissism. I bought the gaslighting book. I'll show you. Here it is. I got it at Barnes and Noble. It's called
Okay.
Gaslighting. It tells gaslighting, and it talks all about gaslighting because a lot of times people have the same issues that seems narcissistic, but narcissistic is really a condition as much as it is behavior. Gaslighting is all about behavior. And basically, what happens is the other person um, either says false things, accuses you of things, all the things that you might want to use and say, well, I'm going to let them and kind of get out of the relationship. But it's not so easy to get out of the relationship when you don't even know you're in it. And that's what happened with me. Um, when I started reading the book, it all became clear to me that all of the things that I went through in that 5 year relationship and marriage, I was being gaslighted and I didn't even realize it. And so it's really challenging to say, well, I'm going to use to let them do it and just go my own way. But if I'm not even conscious of what's happening, it's hard to get out of that. And so that's really what I wanted to talk a little bit about today. Additionally, what I've come to conclude is that whether it's narcissism, which is an illness, and gaslighting, And then you throw into the fact that you have a relationship in your family or you have a relationship in work, and it's impossible at work. Let's say somebody's gaslighting you or narcissisting, confusing and doing things with you at work. It's hard to parse that out because it may be that one person in you, but you're in a family of people who are running a business. They may not be all your family, but there's a great deal of people who are in a business together with each other, and they just can't say, well, I'm just going to let them do that when maybe that person is your boss, or maybe that person is your coworker, or whatever the case might be. And so it's more difficult than it actually seems. And when you talk about letting them, it's going to be tough anyway. Um, I know some people who have believed that they were connected to a narcissist and how they were being treated, um, but they weren't really a couple. They weren't really business partners. They really didn't have much in looked at the world the same way they did, or how they connected. And there's a couple in a dance at Hawk Hollow on Friday nights every other week. And this couple met there, and they've had a relationship now for 4 or 5 years, off again, on again, off again, on again. And it's hard to say that that's narcissism because they don't really have a connection other than coming to that dance. And they live so far apart that they can't actually cohabitate. So to me, it's not really narcissism as much as it is gaslighting. Um, and when I went through the book today, I identified in the book 33 different ways that someone could gaslight you. 33 different ways. And so it becomes problematic because you may figure out a way to stop being gaslighted, let's just say in 10 of them. You still have 20 plus other ones that they can come back at you in another way. And so I think what I'd like to open up is when you think about what a gaslighting is, and that's essentially lying to you, saying you don't really understand what I said. No, I never said it. Some of these things that are in the book. Have you run into other people in your relationship, which now looking back at it, say, gosh, that may have been what I was going through? And the point there for me is now another book, which I'm sure some of you are aware of, and that's the Fourth Agreements. And for me, it ties right into the second agreement. It's not about me. And so when somebody's gaslighting me, it isn't about me, it's about them. And Mel Robbins says, go ahead and just let them, let them do what they're doing. That doesn't really help you when the other person has got 33 ways of gaslighting you. It's hard to do that because they've got a lot more to gain than you have to lose. So I'm open now for any examples or ideas or questions that you might have. So I'll turn it over to Leroy if you want on everybody. So
Um, they'll have to unmute themselves, but yeah, again, this is a dialogue, so you're all welcome to chime in and comment on other people's comments as well. So who's got something they want to share?
So maybe you could define narcissism and gaslighting. You did give some indications that there was lying and
sure.
people saying I didn't say that kind of thing.
Well, narcissism, I can give you a quick under the American Psychological Association DMS disorders.
Okay.
Narcissism is called um, it's a personal divider. They're claimed in with disorders of histrionic, antisocial, borderline, and narcissistic behavior. Um, typically gaslighting is manipulation, where the one person is manipulating the other person, or they would come to say, oh, I did so and so today. And then maybe a couple of days you ask them and say, well, how'd that come out? Wish you did that. And said, I didn't do that. You must be mistaken. I didn't do that. I didn't
Mhm.
say that. I didn't go there. I wasn't there. And how do you, I mean, how do you check that? Um, and, in our culture now, we got a lot of people on both sides of the table that are using a lot of gaslighting in media and in their parties to try to get people to back them or vote for them or whatever the case might be. It's manipulation. Um, an example, Lorraine, is custodies of kids in divorces. And that's one of the ways that the gaslighting comes out in the professional. And that's where I connected with my wife at the time. And when we were divorcing, it wasn't so much about the kids because she had her kids and I had my kids. We didn't have any between us. But when we went to the mediation, probably that if you're going to get divorced in Michigan, you have to go through mediation before you can go to the judge. And so they had an arbitrator who came, and she was in one room and I was in a different room, both with our lawyers. And we were arguing over what we were going to divide. And so I was in a place where I was ready to divide pretty much everything except one person, one thing. I wasn't willing to give up on that. Um, and so we went back and forth, and finally I was wit's end, and I just decided I want to get my kids over on this. So I said, okay, tell her I'll go ahead and do it. And he was very happy, figures now we're going to be done. He goes out and tells her and comes back and says, she says she'll see you in court. And I
Does
said,
that
okay.
answer your question, Lucille?
Yeah, I'm getting a picture of it. I
I,
think
I
I've
um
experienced it.
Well, what happened was it was
Christy.
so interesting because what I was reading on in the book, they said that a lot of professionals and judges in those kinds of cases see what's happening if there's a gaslighting thing going on. And I
Mhm.
think that's what happened with him because when we did the divorce, I got everything I wanted because he figured out she was gaslighting me. I didn't. I didn't know, but he found it. So I leaned over to my attorney and I said, "Are things going really good here, or am I missing something?" And he said, "Shh, don't say anything." I said, "Okay." So,
Dean?
I always felt like gaslighting was having somebody do something that's sort of mean to you and then blame it on you,
mhm.
that it's your fault that they're doing that mean thing to you.
I think that would fall into that category. Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
When I learned about this, and I don't know, I haven't read the book yet, but to me, it appealed to a lot of the concepts that we've been talking about related to allowing someone to be themselves or just allowing a situation to be rather than try and change it. Um, and so I wanted to I still want to learn more about techniques that she suggests to do that. Um,
Well,
one of
Chris,
the
what it was,
courses.
one other thing about narcissists, Lucille asked about that. Um, I got a little quote here. It says, a person who has an excessive interest in or on and feel, they're superior to others. Exaggerated sense of self and importance, persistent need for admiration, lack of empathic for others, exercise pride in achievements, and snobbery. grandiosity, preoccupation with power and prestige.
Mm. You're talking about our president.
I think this would all fit, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm not reading about that in the news. I'm reading about it in the professional business of psychology.
Yeah.
It seems to me that we spend a lot of time complaining about other people, and I do that too, or
Yeah.
situations, and waste a ton of energy when we could be focusing that on things that we want to see happen or we want to change. And it's impossible to change other people. So
Hmm.
dwelling on what a victimhood or what someone else is doing to me or has done to me, that seems a big waste of time.
Yeah. I have a lot of friends that have kids or siblings or parents or cousins that don't talk to them. One of the friends that Deanna has, her daughter is in a cult and will not allow her mother to even see the kids. Um, and so, I said that's the kind of thing that fits together. So if Mel Robbins says, well, just let them keep the kids away from you, let them not have communications with you. That's pretty hard when you're talking about family and you're a grandmother to kids and you can't see them. Um, and that's not just to her. They're going to have that same attitude to anybody else who's not in the cult.
I was,
I don't
I
know
was
if any of
doing
you any of you had any interactions with the people who were in a cult at all? Have any of you experienced that? Or somebody was a friend or no, worked with you or whatever the case might be, where they were in a cult and they weren't getting out of the cult. Um, when I
Well,
was in graduate school, I needed a place to live for the rest of the term that I was in, and two women took me into their basement, and both of them were individuals who had studied and learned how to work with people who were coming out of the cult. So they captured somebody and put them in a room, and they started to help them come back to reality. And that was what they get paid to do. Um, because once you're in, you're in. And, you go Waco is an example of that. And what happened out in Oregon, I think, too, where the authorities just took over the place and a lot of blood was shed. So,
Solomon, were you going to say something?
I've listened to a couple podcasts with Mel, but I haven't read the book either. And I was trying to do a little more research because of what you're saying, Kai, and it sounds like um, I was just asking how it applies to narcissism and gaslighting. It says
mhm,
letting them doesn't mean accepting abuse, manipulation, or distortion of your reality. In other cases, it means letting them reveal their toxic patterns. So
so,
it does mean empowering you to stop overfunctioning and trying to change. It doesn't mean accepting passive tolerance of cruelty, gaslighting, or disrespect. So I wonder if there's, I think her work could probably be uh, on the surface level interpreted as like, okay, let this abuse happen. And it is saying like, let that person be themselves to expose that, but don't tolerate. Make sure you're still setting clear boundaries and um, I don't know if you feel like do you feel like the work has helped you in applying that to what you're saying, or are you saying that the work feels like there's just something missing there where um
yeah, thanks,
it's
Solomon. I
yeah.
think where my piece comes in around this initially is the second agreement that it's not about me. So when I'm interacting with other people, that's kind of my default now. And so it isn't so much if they're attacking me or they're lying to me or trying to fool me or something, all that. I really come to the place of saying it's not about me. I'll listen to you and take in what I can or can't do or won't do, but it hasn't got anything to do with me. And I know that, so I don't fall into the trap anymore of, oh my God, what did I do to make this person upset or to piss them off or to treat me like this? Because I could stop letting a person treat me like this, but it doesn't necessarily come through the point of I'm living a life that says it's not about me. I can own what is about me, and I can do that and say, I apologize for what happened. I didn't mean to do this. I'm sorry I hurt you. That was about me. But when somebody is not me trying to take my world and says it looks different than what you think it is, then I just know that's not about me. And it doesn't mean that I don't like the other person. It doesn't mean I wouldn't love the other person. It's just the fact that whatever they're doing, and that's not about me. They're making their choices. And I like what you said about what Mel, was focusing on. And, if you've got a husband or a wife and kids in the house, or whatever the kid, um, parents are nearby, grandparents are nearby, whatever the case might be, um, that's the kind of thing where you can say, well, I can let them be them to a point, but if it's starting to impact another relationship I have, then it becomes more complicated than just saying, I'll let them do it. Because if I witness something, I'm just not going to say, well, that's what they did. There are certain boundaries where people get to the point where I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and you like it or lump it. So
Let's let's hear from some other people that haven't had a chance to speak about
I
issues they're
was,
dealing with.
I'm, I've ran into Mel's work before, and I was sort of excited about the empowerment that Let Them seem to offer, where I'm sort of like, oh, putting down my weapons. Oh, I'm unclenching my fists. Let them. Um, the what's interesting is, well, the 12-step programs have this. Um, I guess it's a prayer. Then God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change the
right,
things that I can, and to know the difference. And that seems to, put things into three categories. Um, and one of them is let them. I can't
right.
change them. And I shrug my shoulders. And it's not my problem, not my fault. And uh, so I'm very interested in the overlap, and I'd heard the word gaslighting, and I wasn't quite sure what it meant. So this has been very helpful. Um, Crazy.
Apparently, it's come from a movie that was out in the 1930s.
Huh.
It was called Gaslight, and it was very much star actors and actresses, and it was all about, I guess, the male is gaslighting the female to make her want to be with him, and then once she got captured, then he had what he wanted. So
Power.
yeah, yeah.
I was married to a narcissist for a while, and me being the person who likes to give, do all I can to make it work, it just became insanity. And I just reached a point where I could say, I'm if I go along with everything he says, I'm just going down a rabbit hole.
Right.
And I decided I'm not going there, and told him to get a divorce. And it was just like a big relief
Hmm.
when I made that decision. I had to take care of me and not him.
Yeah. And that brings up a good point, Lucille, because when Mel says, yeah, let them do it, one of the things they could do is just leave, like you were saying. You
Mhm.
know, I'm going to let them do what they're doing, and I'm out of here.
Yeah,
And
that's
so,
that's me.
yeah, and that's the kind of thing that some people, I think, that are commenting on Facebook around the challenges they're having with that is that they don't realize what they have to do. They can do certain things that they're not doing, even by letting the other person do it. It could be just indifference. See, that's a different thing than just saying, let them do it. It's, I don't care what they do,
Mhm.
because usually that means, yeah, they do, but they don't like it. So, yeah. And some people, it's just challenging because of the nature of the relationship they have. Um, and sometimes you can't change, like Matt said, you can't change the other person. You can have them go to a 12-step meeting, you can have them go to different groups or whatever the case might be. Um, and if they have a gambling concession, you say, well, let them be, and they run all through the money, and you lose all your equity. Yeah, that's hard to do. Yeah.
Mhm.
I guess I got a question, Kai, just in terms of what you're saying about that of um, bringing up these examples where it seems hard to let them.
Right.
And so, yeah, how do you balance kind of letting people be who they are, but still protecting your boundaries and well-being? How have you found to kind of do that?
Well, I think what Mel says is uh, let me. And so if I can move away from what the way that I need to do to let them just be let them, I need to be sure about what I'm going to be able to do, because what I'm me, because maybe that gaslighting or narcissism has been so long that I don't even know that I have boundaries. I don't know that I can actually walk away or I can do something different. And so that's the second part of hers. And I saw a couple of videos where she was kind of frustrated because people weren't talking about that part of the book, where she says, let them and let me. And so that's the second part of it is I don't just have to stop and let them stop talking to me the way they're doing and saying, well, that's what they're going to do. Well, I need to walk away from that. And so I'm not going to just stand here and let you continue to do it. I'm going to take myself away from this, and I'm going to now be grateful that I did.
Mhm.
So it's not about letting the other person just run all over you. It's about having your boundaries, as Matt was saying. You got to have your boundaries, and those are your boundaries. And it may be that um, you may stop having a relationship with that person, or you may sit down with them and saying, here's the boundaries that I'm going to live with now. And if you don't like it, too bad. I'm going to go.
Well,
So,
I don't want to totally change the subject, but I will. Let me. No, just kidding. Um, it seems like part of this is um, letting yourself be yourself too. So, as I get close to retirement, one of the issues is like, what do I want to do next? And it seems like what a lot of what I've done is responding to other people's needs
mm,
at
hmm
work mostly, or so what are my needs? What are my desires? And I let me be myself more as part of the answer to kind of recovering your own
hmm
sense of gravity, your own sense. purpose and, what gives you joy in life versus trying to fix everybody else's or trying to make everyone else happy.
Right. And that's or you're sorting what it is that you want and you know what you don't want. And I think that we could also, what was coming up for me, Leroy, was um, the gaslighting and narcissism could be directed at you as a caretaker. And so they're, finding ways to make you feel guilty so that you can take care of them. And that's one of the things that um, a lot of people have, that sort of sense of, I want to help others who are in trouble. And bless you for doing that. And sometimes it's detrimental because the other person begins to count on you and saying, this is what I need from you. And now you're maybe in a relationship that is asking you to give more than you can give.
I certainly don't want to see everything through the eyes of a 12-step program. But when we came to town and somewhat before that, because of the nature of my relationship with my dad, um, I was going to Al-Anon meetings, and it seems like they're the goal is the same, to straighten out what is mine and what's not,
Yeah.
and the um, and also the challenge that some people have because they are so convinced that they're wrong. So what their head says is yes, I get it, and what their heart says is no. He'll be mad at me if I
Right.
say no and if I ask for what I want. So um, it's slippery. The
Mhm. It's kind of like one of the drunks saying, I'm under control. I'm not really a bad drinker.
Yeah,
Mhm.
if she would just, yeah, I'm sorry not to make it a sexist or
Mhm.
Well, that's what males would think. If she just leave me alone about this, or I wish she would do what I told her to do, or whatever the case might be. Yeah.
and
And
even
then,
I drink because of what she
oh,
does. Yeah.
yeah, that's a good one too. Yeah, that's a real good one. Yeah.
So my mom has borderline personality disorder, which is close to narcissism.
Right.
And my sister is taking care of her because she promised my dad that she would. And it is quite difficult for her because my mom does the gaslighting thing all the time. And she has to work really hard to stay detached from the gaslighting,
Right.
basically. It's very complicated. But yeah, she's a strong person and she's managing it, but my heart goes out to her all the time. And I can't help because I'm disabled, a state away, so all I can do is call once in a while. But yeah, anyway, definitely have seen gaslighting through my life. So
And that case is shows something because uh, Chris's mom seems to have the same judgment of everybody. Everybody's wrong, and um, and she's very clear about why. And
Right.
if only they would be different, then things would be better.
Mhm.
Or well, I don't know if they'd be better or not because I don't know. I don't know what that's.
Well, with borderline, you really have a hard time seeing things from another person's point of view.
Right.
That that is basically broken.
Mhm.
And so the whole world is really scary actually from the borderline's perspective
Yeah. What's
because
going to hit me? What's
yeah,
going to hit me next?
people are just doing all these crazy things that you would never expect them to do um, because you can't see their perspective.
One of the things that I've been sort of recovering from at my workplace is sort of a control sort of mindset. People who sort of want to be in control, and I'm probably one of those people. But how do you, well, I'm not even sure what I'm asking here, but I like the idea of an organization or a marriage or a relationship. It's not so much about control, but empowering and encouraging and sort of appreciating the diversity, or just this dialogue maybe is a good example. Um, how do you create a space where people can be themselves, where they can listen to each other and kind of respect the differences and learn together as a couple or a relationship or a whatever. More of a statement than a question, but um, feel free to answer it if you like.
Yeah, one thing that helps me with my mom is I'm just grateful that I'm not in her head,
Mhm.
you know, that I'm just grateful that I've got some sense of, well, reality, I guess, that
Mhm.
works for me.
And, and it sounds compassionate, which is different than if only that person would change, because you're saying, oh, I can't change her, and
Mhm.
and she's sick, and that's heartbreaking. Or it's really sad that she sees the world the way she does. It must be awful. Which doesn't give her permission to do anything, but it's
You still have to set the boundaries.
I've been recovering from a cold this last 2 or 3 days and just really bad sore throat and almost resisting it and noticing how much worse it is when I resist it versus just being with it. And I feel like that kind of applies to everything, all of these situations of when it doesn't feel good and you want it to be different, but you can't leave it immediately because you just have to be with it. It feels like that's the key is just and maybe it's making me more grateful for feeling well when I do feel well. But there's not, in this case, it's not a person I can just leave necessarily, and or a thing that is, but as I just kind of sit with it and don't run away from it, I don't really want to let it be there because it doesn't feel great, but I notice it feels like it's less of a problem if I can just let it be and not try to push it away or say that there's something wrong. I don't know how it directly applies to everyone's situation, but it's yeah.
Well, what came up for me on that, Solomon, is something we haven't really addressed in talking today, and that is that we talk about gaslighting, but I wouldn't I wouldn't even believe that people that are gaslighting are doing all 33 things. they're maybe they're doing just a couple of things. Maybe it's something at work. Maybe it's just something with the kids, one kid, or what. Maybe it's about an uncle or a dad or whatever the case might be. And it doesn't mean that dad is completely a gaslighter, but that when he's with me or with us or whatever, that's when it seems to come out. And so I think that there's probably a prism of how much a gaslighter or narcissist is actually doing,
Yeah.
because it may not be 90% of the time. It may be just 10% of the time. Or one thing, it might be just one thing. And I've talked to lawyers who have said, that they have a pretty good relationship, but that there's this one thing that they just can't agree on and will not continue to want to be together because of this just one thing, whatever it happens to be. And like Matt said, it might be drinking. If you don't stop drinking, I'm leaving. And maybe that person doesn't have really problems anyplace else. And that's the one thing that they're not going to give up. And you're asking me to give something up that you don't know anything about it. You don't know what's going on with me. Why do you think that I'm lying to you and doing stuff like that? So, that's just one place on the spectrum instead of 33 places. Well,
So it's on a curve.
it probably is. It probably is on a curve. Yep. And it may be that, I told you when I was reading the book and it kind of related me back to my marriage, I don't even think she was conscious of what she was doing. I think she was just doing her. And maybe that was from her parents, what she learned about women, what she learned about the businesses that she was in, and what her parenting is about. And that may be just one part of her that happened to be gaslighting to me. I don't know that she gaslighted to others. I don't know that. I didn't even realize I was doing it, getting it when I got it. It's just now that I've realized it.
We have about 5 more minutes if we keep to our 1 o'clock. I don't know if anyone has other deadlines. We can go a little longer if people want to. Um,
I
I
was
did
just
want to.
thinking that in letting all things be as they are, or allowing people to be who they are, that is the directive to ourselves
Right,
to 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 maintain our inner peace in spite of what's going on around us.
right.
And that's a very positive thing.
And challenging.
And challenging.
Well, Leroy and I have talked a little bit about this. I'm going to approach Mary, and what I'd like to do is to put together a group at Fellowship, kind of like we have the Dead Cafe, and have people come in and just talk a little bit about what narcissism and gaslighting has impacted them, and just talk a little bit about that. Um, there's just found a time during the day that the Quakers would let us take some time to just meet and let some people either work with the book if they want to or whatever, uh, to just talk about and hold space. Sometimes that's really important, just to hold space.
I wonder, I wonder if framing it as difficult relationships, um,
Could be, sure.
it, because um, that's not implying that there's fault, but that just the fact that it's difficult means that I don't have the skills to navigate this. And interesting.
Yeah, it wouldn't have to be marriage counseling.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're right. Because it doesn't necessarily mean a husband and a wife. It might be a brother and a sister. So I like the idea of like a relational meeting. Yeah.
To me, I
It's,
have a difficulty, talking about problems, and maybe that's probably my own problem. But to talk more about the things that people have done to us seems counterproductive, and a little bit.
Yep. That doesn't help at all.
So to have a
Um,
group,
Because
go ahead.
we didn't let them. They just did.
What's all?
I was
Yeah.
just gonna say, I do feel like complaining can be healing if you're able to be heard. But
Mhm.
then where's the balance where you go beyond and then you're kind of almost in an echo chamber? And if it's not making you feel better, does it? But if you get like-minded people together that want to talk about things that they're going through, I feel like maybe that is, similar to a group setting of even something like an Al-Anon, like you said, Matt, where it's hard conversations but it's very healing to be able to talk about the hard things.
Yep. So we'll let you know.
I really like what Lucille said, and I like focusing on that vision of what you want it to be versus what you don't want it to be.
Right.
I think is powerful. Just let all things be as they are.
And
I
it's on a
like,
spectrum. I really like that too, Lucille. It's on a
Mhm.
spectrum. Because, the book says there are at least 33, and maybe the person is doing two of them, as opposed to somebody who's doing 10 of them. So it's a whole different
The more
ballgame.
they're doing, the worse the relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
this,
All right. Well, I need to go on, so I'll say goodbye to everyone.
thank
great to
you,
see you.
Lucille.
Thanks for your talk last week, Lucille. Very powerful. Thank you.
I'm glad it was helpful. I just thought afterwards, I'm just talking about myself. What good is this going to do to anybody?
I
Yeah.
missed that one. Is that recorded as well?
Yeah.
An
That'd be
earlier
great.
Yeah,
version.
it's
That'd be
on the
great.
fellowship. Yeah.
Okay,
Talk,
great.
talking to
Good.
Lucille, talking about yourself. Well, you happen to be a wise and wonderful person. So I'm talking about yourself, but
Thank
you,
you. Yeah.
All right, good to hear,
All
see you.
right.
All
I'm
right.
Bye
Thanks,
now.
Leroy.
Thank you. Any other parting comments before you leave? Anyone?
Do you have anybody lined up for June?
No, it's still open for topics or
Okay, cool.
people. Matt?
for some reason the song "Let It Be" comes to mind. So, which is sort of funny because I've known that song for a long time, and it seems to have um, more bite to it or more meaning. So
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. That's good. I'm pretty much sitting with comfortably numb.
thanks, Kai.
All
Thanks,
right.
Leroy.
Take care.
Good to
Good to
see
see
Thanks,
you,
guys.
everybody.
Tallman.
Holding space.
Get better, buddy. See you.
Thanks.
Take care.
Yeah.
Appreciate you putting this on, Dan.
Thank you, Kai, for suggesting the topic.